Welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're diving into the Liberal leadership race. And it is
heating up.
It is really heating up. The big news that dropped today is that former BC Premier Christy Clark announced she will not be running.
That's right.
So we're taking a look at her statement today because it's not just a simple, I'm out.
Yeah.
There's actually quite a bit we can unpack here in terms of what it tells us about this race.
Absolutely.
So one of the things she points to is the timeline.
Yeah.
Saying that it's just not enough time to build a winning campaign.
And that is such a common hurdle in leadership races. You know, they're often these very compressed timelines. It's not a marathon, it's a sprint.
Right.
And so that tends to favor candidates who already have a lot of infrastructure in place or name recognition.
Yeah. It's like you're trying to build a house in a weekend.
Exactly.
You know, you just don't have time to lay the foundation properly.
Yeah, you need that foundation. You need the fundraising networks, the experienced campaign staff, you know, those pre-existing relationships with key players. Yeah.
And to try and build that from scratch in such a short time frame is a monumental task.
Now, she also brings up something that I thought was really interesting, is that she specifically mentioned the challenge of connecting with Francophone Canadians in French.
Right. And that is a huge factor in Canadian politics because, you know, being able to communicate effectively in both official languages is almost essential for someone who aspires to be the leader of the country.
Yeah.
Imagine trying to win over a whole nation when you can't even directly speak to a significant portion of the population.
It's a huge barrier. And this is where I think things start to get really interesting, is that she also sort of took aim at the timing of Trudeau's resignation.
Right.
She said it didn't give the party enough time to renew itself.
That's a very pointed statement.
Yeah.
You know, and it makes you wonder if she's hinting at deeper issues within the Liberal Party.
Right.
Maybe they need more than just a new leader.
Yeah.
You know, maybe they need a more fundamental change in direction.
Yeah. It's kind of like she's saying there are problems that run deeper than just needing a fresh face at the top. Exactly.
And then there was this whole thing about the parting shot that she takes at conservative leader Pierre Poilievre.
Yeah.
She calls him a pushover for mega Republican. Even compares him to Donald Trump.
That was quite the statement. And I think it shows that even though she's not running, she's not afraid to stake out a position to be a strong voice against the opposition.
Yeah.
And it also, you know, sort of highlights this dynamic that we're seeing increasingly in Canadian politics, you know, this sort of interplay between what's happening in the U.S. and the impact that it's having on the Canadian political landscape.
Right. It's almost like we're caught in this tug of war, you know,
exactly,
between the two. And everyone's trying to kind of distance themselves from what's perceived as extreme on either side.
You've got to appeal to your base, but you also have to position yourself as a viable alternative to the other side.
Right.
It's a very delicate balancing act.
So Clark is out, but she certainly didn't go quietly.
No, no.
Her statement has really, I think, thrown a little bit of a wrench into this race.
It has.
And leaves us with a lot to think about.
Yeah.
So we're going to delve a little deeper into all of this after a quick break. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
It's really fascinating how someone can make such an impact without even, you know, officially being in the race.
It's like she dropped a bomb and walked away, you know? And on top of that, she brought up this whole other thing about how women and those from Western Canada often find themselves like, quote unquote, outside the corridors of power in Ottawa.
Right. And that is a really significant statement. You know, she's highlighting this kind of historical imbalance in Canadian politics.
Yeah.
This underrepresentation of certain groups, you know, at the highest levels of government.
Yeah. It's like there's this invisible barrier there.
Yeah.
You know, that they're constantly having to work harder to be heard, to have their perspectives considered.
Exactly. And, you know, Clark is using this moment to really shine a light on that inequality.
Right.
And it raises some interesting questions about, you know, does the system itself need to change to ensure that there's a more diverse range of voices represented in leadership positions?
It makes you wonder how many other potential candidates, especially women, you know, might be facing similar challenges.
Right.
And ultimately deciding against running because of it.
That's a really important point to consider, I think, as we watch this race unfold. You know, are there systemic barriers that need to be addressed?
Right.
Is the playing field truly level for everyone who wants to step up and lead?
So we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah.
You know, we talked about the tight timeline, the language barrier, her critique of Trudeau's resignation, and now this call for more diverse leadership.
It's a lot.
It's a lot to digest. So why should the average person care about this?
Well, I think at its core, this really highlights why leadership matters, period. the decisions that are made by those in power
Yeah.
have a direct impact on all of our lives, whether it's the economy, healthcare, education, the environment, the policies they implement affect us all. So paying attention to these races, understanding where the candidates stand on the issues that matter to you,
Right.
engaging in the political process, that's all part of being an informed and active citizen.
It's about making sure your voice is heard
Absolutely.
and that your interests are represented.
And I think in this specific case, it also underscores the importance of diversity and representation in leadership.
Yeah.
Who sits at the table matters
Mm-hmm.
because it shapes the conversation and the priorities that are set for the country.
It's like having a team of advisors.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
want a variety of perspectives and backgrounds to make sure all angles are being considered.
Exactly. And beyond just the policy implications, I think, this situation also provides this kind of fascinating glimpse behind the curtain of politics.
Yeah.
We see the strategic calculations, the behind-the-scenes maneuvering,
Yeah.
the pressure cooker environment of a leadership race.
It's like a real-life political thriller.
It is. And lastly, I think it reminds us that politics is not a spectator sport. We all have a role to play, by paying attention, having thoughtful discussions, holding our leaders accountable.
Right.
We can help shape a better future for ourselves and our communities.
So true. Now, going back to Clark's statement, there's one more thing I wanted to touch on. It's this part where she says that, she's not done fighting for the candidates and the issues that she believes in.
Yeah, that really stood out to me as well, It suggests that while she might be stepping back from this particular race, she's not exiting the political arena entirely.
So are we thinking that she might be hinting at a future run? Maybe for a different office?
It's certainly possible, She could be laying the groundwork for a future campaign, maybe at the provincial level or even federal.
Right.
Or she might choose to, remain active in a different capacity, maybe as a commentator or advocate.
So she could still wield a lot of influence even without, holding an official position.
Oh, absolutely. Her experience, her connections, her ability to really articulate her views, those are all valuable assets that she can leverage to continue shaping the political landscape.
It's like she's saying, I might be out of this race, but I'm not going anywhere.
Exactly. I'm still here and I'm not backing down from the issues I care about. And that message is likely to resonate with a lot of Canadians, particularly those who feel that their voices aren't being adequately represented in Ottawa.
So Christy Clark might be out of this race, but she's definitely not out of the game.
Yeah.
And as for the race itself, well, it's just getting started. We're already seeing some big names emerge as potential contenders.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to watch how this all unfolds in the coming weeks and months. What issues take center stage? How do the candidates position themselves to try and, appeal to voters?
It's going to be a very interesting race for sure. We'll definitely be keeping a close eye on it all. And we'll be back with more deep dives as the story unfolds. But for now, we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on Christy Clark's decision? Who are you watching in the leadership race? Let us know in the comments. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more deep dives into the news that matters.